Everyone. My name is Esmat. I come from Egypt and I work for ICANN as regional VP for Middle East. And I'm going to talk to you today about one of the projects that was launched a year or so ago in partnership with community members. And just to give you a little bit of a background, 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago, both the African community and the Middle East community kicked off, separately work or process to develop regional strategies, ICANN regional strategies. And in both strategies, the African and the Middle East one, they community identified the area of domain name industry as one key area for ICANN to do further work on in terms of developing this industry and getting more people, organizations, individuals, companies, and so forth, more engaged and more participating, both in work of organizations like ICANN and regional TLD organizations and so forth, and also those who are interested in this business to become first learn more about this business and then become part of this business. So as one of the sort of results or outcomes of the Middle East strategy was this project to establish a DNS entrepreneurship center in partnership with Egypt's National Telecommunication Regulatory Authority, NTRA, which is also the registry of the IDN, the Egypt IDN.Masr. And agreement was signed with NTRA back in London in 2014. I guess. And the main sort of goal of this center is to develop expertise in the various aspects of DNS, policy, technical, business, legal, and so forth. It's a 3-year project over, like three phases. Currently we are in phase 2 where the center itself has been incubated at NTRA and over the past year or so it has been organizing workshops again in partnership with ICANN and other community members. This second phase is going to last till June 2017, so we still have a little more than 1 year to finalize this phase, and hopefully by the end of this phase the center will have developed its sort of strategy or strategic plan for the next 3 years, and then by end of or by beginning of phase 3 it will start lending its expertise across the both African and Middle East regions. So again, as I said, it's a partnership. And all the activities that have taken place over the past year have been done in partnership with many community members, both from within the region and also from outside registries and registrars, technical sort of bodies, CCTLD, many CCTLD registries, particularly in the Middle East. They hosted a number of workshops that were organized. More than 150 participants took part on those trainings, or workshops, nine workshops so far, about business development, about registrars, relationship, about technical DNS operations, about legal issues, domain name disputes, and so forth. And we also conducted one session on train the trainer. And the good thing about this train the trainer thing is today we have 3 or 4 of those who participated in this session. They're now running workshops themselves, so we're doing training, for example, next month, actually end of this month in Istanbul, and ICANN is sending one of its technical team members to this training, but then there is one of the CCTLD team in Turkey is going to participate as co-trainer in this training. And we've done this also in Cairo and in Tunis over the past few months. So it's a true partnership, and the sort of the road is still long, and we look forward to talking to you about this project. The good news is that now there is a program director for the DNS Center hired by NTRA, Hadia Al-Minyawi. She's actually present here in this event today, and I'm sure that she will be talking to you during the breaks about potential work that you can do together. And of course there is a website for the center. The center is also present at the ICANN meeting, so they have a booth at the area where all the registries and registrars are present, so you can also stop by and talk to them and learn more about what their plans are. So that's it for me today. Thank you for listening. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Baher. I think we will take sessions after we hear all the presentations. Next, we are going to have Leonid to share a few experiences from the Asia-Pacific region. So, Leonid, you're free to...
Well, thank you. Yes, hi. I don't have any presentation because I thought that there will be a kind of Q&A session or just, exchange of opinions. So let me tell you, first of all, that I represent a very small, tiny region, godforsaken, somewhere in the distant corner of the world, which is called the Asia Pacific. And we are APTLD, obviously, like my friend Barrack. We are in this regional association for CCTLDs in the region. We have 43 ordinary members, full members, and 12 associate members. So we are very diverse, which is important. Probably for you to understand, we are very diverse. I would say that we have 4 groups of CCTLDs. One is those from the Middle East, less Israel, obviously. The other one, Asia itself, less Turkey. Then we have the Pacific area, and the rest, which I call the Anglo-Saxon minority or the Anglo-Saxon corner, and that's New Zealand and Australia. So very diverse region and very loosely, so far, associated members. So our major task, of course, is to cement this community and to make sure that they have the common ground to cooperate voluntarily at their choice, but at the same time, kind of cultivating the same area. Let me tell you what, speaking of building partnership, if I can just go for another 3-5 minutes, I have a long record of being on both sides. Whenever you do a partnership, you are either, you're not only a partner, you might be a donor or recipient. Back in the 90s, I was in the Russian government. At that time, the Soviet Union collapsed. So we were a huge recipient of foreign technical assistance, of foreign aid, and I vividly recall those times. Over time, new Russia, I mean, the emerging Russia, became some kind of source of technical expertise and policy advice to ex-Soviet states. So I was already in that donor position. And for myself, I drew certain fundamentals or principles which I try to adhere to as long as I'm general manager of APTLD. And those are, you always need to to bear in mind that ultimate objective. Why do you want to build a certain partnership? What is the final destination of your journey? And you got to stay focused on that? Well, it's simple, but it's not that simple when you deal with everyday issues, when you're overwhelmed with your duties, when you have new, minor or big challenges down the road. Then another point is that whenever you do a partnership, one of our greatest writers once put something like, well, in a friendship, one friend is always a slave to the other. So it's very important not to turn yourself into a slave to someone who is going to be your partner. Just to give you an idea, the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, when they come to a certain country, they come with certain requirements, whether that's fiscal austerity or downsizing, certain reforms and so forth. But we should understand that these are very general principles which should be adjusted to the local conditions. And it's not that easy to accommodate all those requirements. So you should show a certain level of understanding and commitment to certain values, so that not to compromise your stance on certain issues. Then I would say there are, well, I wouldn't name them, but there are certain big corporations ready and willing to extend whatever assistance. But once you accept that assistance or whatever aid, you owe something to them, and then they may come to ask for a favor, and that may affect the national interest as your government understands this, and that may affect your standing in the eyes of the government. So being neutral is very important, and striking a right balance between different, let's say, partners is equally important. Just to give you an idea, we have one particular member in APTLD, and that's a very small CCTLD run by just 2 people, and they're not paid for that job because this is a kind of extra job. So I approached them and I asked, what if I talk to some big transnational corporation? They may come, you know, with a certain package for you so that you guys could just run this CCTLD, well, let's say, in a more favorable situation. And they said, and I was delighted to hear that, they said, no, thank you very much, we don't need that transnational corporation because we want to stay neutral. Then it's very important when you do a partnership, it's very important to give a reality check to what you are offered, or to whatever recommendation you have. Because partners may be biased or may be simply wrong. They don't know the local conditions. It's up to you to craft certain set of requirements. Remember, partnership, it's not a slavery. So you're an equal partner. And then it's very important, believe me, I'm from Russia, I know what I'm talking about. And you know, it's very important to stay integral and accountable. Because there is yet one more point to recall. Let's say there is a huge market of international partnerships and assistance and aid. Likewise, there is a huge market of recipients of that aid, or let's say partnership relations. So if you stay not only focused on the ultimate objective, but if you also stay integral, and if everybody knows that your reputation is impeccable, then chances are high for you that you would engage in very good and very appropriate partnerships than otherwise. So just to give you a couple of examples how we at APTLD are building these relations and how we try to establish credible partnerships. Well, Bahar knows that I'm always very critical and harsh on ICANN, sometimes unnecessarily harsh. You know, being a Russian, it's a good excuse. You know, with our president, you know, being very rogue these days, Russians can say whatever they like. This is a perfect excuse. I'm a Russian after all. So, my point is that I should commend ICANN's office in Singapore for coming up with very good partnership initiatives and one of them being, delivering training. I think Barrack, the same goes for Africa. I mean, they do deliver very good trainings, and we appreciate that. But it's not that which is our ultimate objective. We need to bolster our capacity. And Barrack and myself and the ICANN training team came up with the idea of training of trainers program, which is in the making now. But this is a perfect example how we can develop our relations to the extent that we become equal partners in that future project, which whose ultimate objective is to have a good team of local trainers going to ISPs in your region and delivering certain trainings. Likewise, we have very good relations with ISOC, and we do understand that in certain countries ISOC is very welcome. In some countries, the attitude towards ISOC is a little bit, dictated by some prejudices. But apart from that, what we do with ISOC is we co-fund, let's say, certain grantees to come to our meetings, mostly from the least developed, landlocked, or Pacific Island nations. So we jointly sponsor their fellowships, let's say, to come to our meetings. And I think that this work is, we are gradually building on this work, so we have more and more people coming for our meeting like that. Then, of course, global registrars. We cannot, I'm absolutely confident that we, in Africa or in Asia, Asia Pacific, we cannot develop our CCTLDs without engaging with global registrars. But again, there should be some balance between their interests and yours. And my understanding that we can find that common ground in dealing with them and having them on our side as partners, meaningful partners. And finally, and that's important for Africa, I'm sure, we should also engage with our own members so that they become partners on peer-to-peer horizontal level. Like we have that Anglo-Saxon corner, and they do quite a tremendous job to help, to bolster capacity of those small Pacific Islands CCTLDs. So what we agreed on with, for example, .NZ, and that's CCTLD for New Zealand, is that they would cover that Southern Pacific. They would just engage with the local members, because we cannot, I'm stationed in Moscow. I cannot reach out to those people, and I'm unaware of their daily needs, while New Zealand is just, let's say, around the corner in the close proximity, so they can deal with those people and they can help bolster that capacity. So this is, on the one hand, this is peer-to-peer partnership. On the other hand, it's APTLD as a regional organization and one of our members teaming up, building a partnership to help a certain, let's say, a certain group of our members. So with that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Oh, by the way, there was that question from Paul regarding that shared registry platform. So I will be happy to highlight on this, because I just got an answer from one of our members. Thank you.
Thank you, Leonid. We'll have a question and answer session after all the presentations have been made. Next, we are going to hear from Carolina from AfTLD.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Carolina Guerre. I'm the General Manager of AfTLD, and the focus of this presentation is oriented at developing the idea of how AfTLD recently has been exploring its external alliances and with other key partners and stakeholders in the ecosystem. And I do mention this specifically because for any regional top-level domain organization, I would say in the CCTLD environment, our most strategic partners are always our members. Our full members or our affiliate members are key for the success of the organization and the activities we develop. So I'm not going to focus on the internal partnerships and internal relationships we try to build and the trust we try to foster among our members and the community, but try to look forward as to how we engage with external parties to the organization. And this idea of internal or external is very much part of what our bylaws, the statutes that we have developed as a regional top-level domain organization have enforced upon us. So we have a structure which is similar to all our sister organizations. We have full members, where we have affiliate members, and where we have observers. As a regional top-level domain organization, we only can accept as a member some organization that is a top-level domain. But that doesn't mean that for a regional top-level domain organization, this is the only way we want to go forward and we want to work and engage. So the figure, the legal statutory figure of observers is what I will be basically sort of exploring more in this very short presentation. So the idea of going forward with strengthening our partnerships with other key stakeholders and our observers started sort of to crystallize very, very clearly in while we were planning our strategic plan for 2018 for the next 3 years. It's a strategic plan that began to materialize as from January this year, and where we have reframed, ApTLD has reframed its vision and its mission under this strategic plan. And as you see, I mean, particularly with respect to the mission, the idea of strengthening capacities, competencies, and the cooperation amongst its members becomes something that was already there in previous missions and strategic documents, but it becomes much more relevant. And the other objective or the other point about this mission is that ApTLD sees itself as a key stakeholder in the development of DNS-related aspects in the regional ecosystem and the international ecosystem. So it wants to engage, it wants to participate, and it wants to influence much more in that arena. And our 4 strategic lines to accomplish this mission and vision for the following 3 years are related with the development of capacity building, achieving a greater financial sustainability, doing advocacy and positioning of internet-related matters, specifically with DNS concerns and CCTLDs, and institutional strengthening. And I'm not going to go in depth into any of these lines now in this presentation, but they are all deeply related, and they depend greatly on the kind of partnerships and strategic relationships the organization can build with its members and with other key actors. So where we stand now in terms of how ApTLD is developing or has developed. I mean, it's not that this is something completely new and that in the past years nothing has happened along the lines. No, actually this is what has been done, and where we want to go is my next slide. So where we stand now and what are who are our key partners these days, and I'm just mentioning some key organizations which unfortunately the caps went, the font sizes were a bit too large in some cases, and the format didn't come out too nicely. But our sister organizations are key partners for us. I mean, we are expecting to formalize our engagement and work together tomorrow in a board meeting. So this is, I mean, maybe it's so obvious that we shouldn't even mention it, but for our work, this is crucial and this is essential. We are only 4 of a kind in the world, and if we don't work together, then there's nothing very substantial that we think we could achieve. We also work very closely, and I'm just mentioning only one example, with the regional internet registry in our region, with LACNIC. And just to mention, I mean, they are one of the managing nodes of the APTLD ENICAS Cloud, which is a project that was that began to work last year. So, I mean, this just shows how there is not just like purely policy interest in having a relationship with LACNIC, but also we do share operational concerns and we share some common projects, and this is one which I really like and wanted to share with you. As part of the strategic regional ICANN strategy plan for the region, which Bahar was mentioning, one particular initiative in the Middle East, APTLD is as a strong partner for ICANN in executing some of its projects as part of the strategy, and this is where we are a strong partner for ICANN, and ICANN believes and APTLD believes we add a lot of value to materializing some of its projects and its ideas for the development of the DNS in our region. And ISOC has always been very much a partner for APTLD in terms of developing this technical capacity building, and this is a role that we like to publicly acknowledge and thank for their interest and for their concerns, and for having in mind CCTLDs as key partners in developing national DNS infrastructure. We do have some, I would say, less formalized partnerships, but where we participate actively and become involved in the policy processes of some some regional organizations, and this is the case with the ELAC process and the Organization of American States, who has different project lines inside, many of them related with cybersecurity and internet infrastructure. So I would say this is the map of where we stand now, and what we want to achieve in the future is to consolidate this. Maybe I would say we're not so much interested these days in sort of going forward and having a very extensive network of partners, because we think we are covering some of the most important players for APTLD currently. But what we do want is to increase the level of commitment, the level of programming, the level of projects, and by doing this we just don't want to institutionalize and sign documents that lead us nowhere. We just want to sort of have a clearer roadmap and not just say we like you and that's it, and we know we share same concerns, but we want to sort of have some clearer projects of where we are, what we're doing, and how we are going to go forward with this. So, for example, and this is something that has become very visible with the work that ICANN has been doing in the LAC region with the regional strategy. It is much more interesting for APTLD not just to become a partner who executes certain projects of the strategy, but also, I mean, to say, okay, so this is the middle road map of how we see each other working in 2 or 3 years' time, and not just be sort of concerned in a renovation on a yearly basis of certain activities, which is for us and for how we are thinking about the organization not enough now. And this is it, and I would be grateful to answer and pleased to answer any questions that you might have later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carolina, for that insightful presentation. Next, we are having Peter van Ross from Center.
Thank you, Barrack. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Peter van Rost. I'm the General Manager of Center. We're AfTLD's counterpart for Europe. When I was listening to Carolina's presentation, I was actually very impressed by the structured way in which you cooperate on a regional level. In Europe, it's slightly different. But I want to focus on during my short presentation is more a couple of practical examples of where we cooperate with stakeholders in our industry to make the life of CCTLDs better. But before I do that, just to make sure that I know where to focus the right amount of my time on, could I just see a show of hands from the room? How many of you are CCTLDs or are working in some way for CCTLDs? Okay, so that's roughly half. How many of you, and those that already raised their hands, don't raise it again, how many of you work for organizations in the ISTAR group, so ISOC, ICANN, other regional players? 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, thank you. That's perfect. I couldn't have chosen my examples better, I hope. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is how we work with registrars. Whereas Carolina is obviously right. I mean, the strategic alliance that we form ourselves in our regions is obviously the network that we provide to our members. In addition to that, there is the associate members and there are the observers. For us in observers in Center, they are more like public manifestations of partnerships without strong formalization. And the partners, the observers that we have in Center are similar to those in APTLD, obviously translating it to a different region. But aside from the members and the partners from the ISTAR group, the industry players that our members are most related with and that they need very much as a basis for their success are the registrars. And what was lacking in Central until a couple of years ago was that there was no formal exchange with registrars. On the contrary, they were even pushed away from Center because we felt at that time that it was better that we had a confidential environment in which CCTLDs could discuss stuff amongst themselves. So things have changed. This year, for the third time, we're going to organize a Registrar Day in Belgrade in October. And on a high level, these meetings only have two goals. First of all, they provide an opportunity to network. For this year, we're even considering speed dating between CCTLDs and registrars. To give you a picture of the room, roughly 60 representatives of CCTLDs come to these meetings and about 30 to 40 registrars. Typically the largest ones, and then you would maybe have 5 or 10 local registrars too. So we bring these two groups together. And it's amazing that in this day and age, in our environment, with all the opportunities to reach out and communicate, how very necessary this face-to-face time still is. Secondly, during those meetings, what we want to avoid is that we have a very pleasant day, we have a nice social event, and we all go home and nothing gets done. So we make sure that Center assists the registries in keeping the contacts alive with those registrars that they met. And we're also identifying specific, very concrete projects that both registries and registrars can contribute to and that help both getting better. So the two examples that I have is, the first one is EPP. In Europe, and I would assume that it's similar in other regions, one of the main frustrations of registrars is that all registries use a different flavor of EPP. Even if they publicly state on their website that they've implemented full EPP, it typically is not, because their own policies require specific subsets of data that needs to be filled into the automated forms, etc. So you will hardly find two registries that share the identical implementation of EPP in the CCTLD world. So what we're going to do is help to make sure we're not going to harmonize EPP. I mean, that ambition would be overreaching by a million miles. But we're going to make sure that at least the EPP codes that registries use can be properly translated into language that registrars understand, so that they can decide whether they want to implement something or not. The second example is the same environment, registrar accreditation. As Center, we received so many questions from registrars asking, can I sell this CCTLD or that CCTLD, whereas that information is publicly available. It is available on their website and they could simply check it, but it's not in one place. So as a regional organization, we're making sure that we remove the friction from that communication platform. And so registrars will have a one-stop shop center where they can find all that information, and we can point them to the right people if they need further information. Last point I want to talk about is our very practical cooperation with the other ISTAR organizations in Brussels. Mainly with Euro-ISPA and RIPE, but also with ISOC on a more European-wide level. We collaborate on two main things, and we have a reason for that. First of all, as Center, we're only 5 people. Some of our partners are much larger and have been much more involved in some of the internet governance initiatives. I mean, there is no way that we would be able to follow everything that's happening in Geneva or Paris or the broader IGF environment. So we all try to focus on particular parts, and we sync on a regular basis. More importantly, we cooperate on regional initiatives, and the prime example is Eurodig, hosted by Giovanni's Sapias Eurit this year in Brussels. So we get together with the other ISTAR organizations, and we make sure that we can translate our technical knowledge, our technical experience, into knowledge for decision makers. And on the same level, we organize training sessions at the European Parliament and the European Commission, on-demand training sessions where we explain the technical layer, carefully making sure that we remain neutral in that process, and making sure that decision makers have the understanding and the knowledge that they need to come up with proper regulation that actually helps and that doesn't break things. So summarizing, in Europe we try to focus on very practical projects in terms of partnerships. The ones that are going on now with the registrars are EPP and accreditation overviews, and with the other ISTAR organizations we're mainly active in the area of education and training. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Peter. It's question and answer session. So if you have a question, just go to the microphone. Remember, you can ask the question in English or in French. Let's queue up, and then we'll take all questions, then the panel will respond. Kindly introduce yourself as you ask your question.
My name is Hadi Al-Minyawi. I'm the director of the Domain Name System Entrepreneurship Center. And my question is to Carolina about the observers. You mentioned the observers, and it wasn't really clear for me the role of the observers and who are they and what's exactly their role.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? Okay, Carolina, you can take that one.
Hello, is it working? Yes. Yeah. Yes, that's a very good question, and I actually didn't expand on the criterion characteristics that observers have, and I think this is a question that could be, my answer could be complemented by my colleagues, because we share some specificities in each of the regional organizations. Observers are, I said observers cannot be top-level domains. That's it. I mean, they cannot be a registry. If they are a registry, whether they are a generic or a CCTLD, then they can become full members or affiliate members. So observers cannot be a registry. I mean, that's something, a characteristic that I think we share with all the regional top-level domain organizations. So what we have as observers is a collection of organizations, I would say, very diverse, from a very diverse background, but which share the concerns of developing, I would say, the DNS and the Internet. So the examples we have of the requests and the kind of organizations we have currently in LACTLD is definitely organizations such as ICANN, such as ISOC, such as the three other regional top-level domain organizations, AfTLD, APTLD, and Center. We have some regional organizations, for example, who are in charge of developing e-commerce activities, and the e-commerce chamber in Latin America and the Caribbean. They are also our observers. We have NetNode, which is a technical organization, a Swedish technical organization that develops IXPs and DNS infrastructure. So it's as I said, it's a very and even more political organizations in the Latin American and Caribbean context, which are not intergovernmental. So, for example, the OAS made a request to become an observer. It was discussed, and because we don't have a specific definition in our statutes, we believed that it would be a kind of a better relationship to engage with specific activities with an MOU rather than have an IGO as an observer in LACTLD. But this is something that is was defined by the General Assembly. It is not something that is defined by our bylaws at this stage. Bylaws can be modified. Maybe in the future this is something that LACTLD would like to engage in more thoughtfully and say whether they will define more features and characteristics of what are the kind of observers that could be accommodated into such an organization. And I must also say that LACTLD defines all its processes for membership application or for observership application through its General Assembly, and I believe that's also the case in the other sister organizations. Which means that the board might have an idea, but then the members in a General Assembly might be against it. So, and this is something that we definitely have. I mean, we have observership requests that are accepted or not accepted by the board, but they are liked or not liked by the General Assembly, and this is something that the board has to accept. I hope that answered a bit your question.
Definitely it does, but another thing also that was not really clear for me, the real expectation or role of the observers.
We are getting into the nitty-gritty. The role of observers have to contribute in some way to the core values and the mission and of the organization. I mean, if it's an observer that LACTLD does not see there will be a reciprocal kind of value exchange in that kind of relationship, then it is not accepted. For example, we receive requests from organizations or individuals that would like to be observers, but then we ask, what is the value for us? I mean, we do have a procedure, and the observership request form is on our website, so it's very clear. So we ask questions such as, why do you want to become an observer? What do you think LACTLD will gain from having you as an observer? What will you gain? And then observers do not have access to the kind of confidential information that is shared in certain email lists that we have, which are restricted only to members, and information produced by LACTLD regarding market share and certain, specific studies that we conduct related with members. So they get a flavor, they get to know what the organization is doing, what's going on, they get access to individual people, and they belong to the network, but they don't have access to confidential information. And I don't know whether Leonid or Peter would like to complement something additional.
It is a very good question, because it's something that on a regular basis comes on the table of my board of directors. I would say at least twice, once every 2 years. Some observers take their role, see their role very differently than others. Observers that we like are those that show up at our meetings and share what's happening in their part of the world and take our message from our members back to their corners. Perfect examples for us is, for instance, ICANN is an observer that does exactly that. European Commission is an observer who does exactly that. For some observers, they see their role more as a formal gesture of partnership. And I know that, for instance, they will then use our logos, and they ask us to use their logo in some of our events. But that's not the most useful aspect from my personal point of view. Thanks.
Thank you. I think we will take the next round of questions, and then we can answer them all at a go.
Good morning. My name is B. Oladipo from .ng. Mine is not a question, actually. It's more an intervention. I just sat back, and when Peter was making his presentation, this is something I wrote down like 2 days ago, but when we're discussing the cooperation between registry, registrars, and registrants. But somehow I never got around to talking about it during that session. But when Peter was making the presentation today, it came back again. And I'm like, well, maybe I should just come and share my thoughts with the rest of us. The truth is, we've had all these discussions about cooperation between CCs in Africa, and encouraging that we should expand our scope and all of that. But there's something that we're missing out, which came out in Peter's presentation, which is there's need for us to have strong cooperation between the registrars in Africa. Many of these guys are people who set up the business with the hope of making money. But the truth is, so many of them don't understand the value chain of making money from the registrar business. And I think we need to set up a forum. This goes to AfTLD, that we need to set up a forum where we would have registrars in Africa come together and share ideas and best practices. That's something that I think is lacking. We have people who are very strong in the registrar business, who have experienced some things and have ideas and experience that they can share with people who are just starting in the business, or people who are struggling in the business. That's my intervention.
Thank you, B. Dr. Paulus.
Thank you. Paulus Nyirenda with AfTLD and .mw. I have two questions. I think one of them I've already asked on the mailing list. But I wanted to find out from the NCC, for example, whether it could be a good organization to do something like what my colleague started. The question that has arisen basically is that you have a lot of registrars accredited to CCTLDs in Africa, and with 52 countries or 52 CCTLDs, registrars are struggling to get accreditation to each CCTLD and then pay a deposit on each CCTLD. At the end of the day, the amount of money that they need to deposit gets to be very large. So a solution is being thought where they could make maybe one deposit and carry it across all the CCTLDs. First of all, I want to find out if this is an issue in other regions. Is it an issue in Center? Is it an issue in APTLD? And secondly, if there is a way that you have found to this problem where registrars could sort of go to one particular center and carry out their accreditation and get recognized across the region, or make one payment and get that payment get recognized across the region. Thanks. And by the way, in Africa there is a registrar association which responds to his question, and I'm quite sure that my colleague behind me will talk about it.
Thank you. Mohammed?
Thank you. So my name is Mohammed from Senegal, from Hewel.com registrar, and also from the African Registrar Association. Okay, louder. So my name is Mohamed Diop. I'm from Senegal, West Africa. I'm from Hewel.com, who is a registrar in the West region. And I'm also from the African Registrar Association. So I have two questions for both Center and LACNIC. The first question is related to the financial budget. I did not see any details regarding this. My question is, how do you get funded? One, is that support from members or outside of your organization? The second one is, are your organization members from the GNSO, like the Registrar Association? Because I know that for Center, they are now both registrar and registry members. So are you members both in the registry constituency and registrar constituency or not? And for LACNIC also, are you member from CC, NSO constituency in ICANN? So the first question is, are you just following like an observer or outside the policy staff, or your individual members are members of these global registration constituency, or do you come as a whole? And the second question is related to the budget. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohammed. I think to the panel, you may answer in no particular order.
Thank you, Mohammed, for the questions. So on the budget and the financial question, Center's budget is composed of voluntary contributions from its members. And with that, we cover all our activities, including registrar cooperation. There has been some discussion whether we should actually charge a cost-based fee for registrar participation during those registrar days, as we call them. And we've decided against it because the only goal is to attract as many registrars as possible, not to necessarily to keep a neutral budget on this one. So it is something that we budget for, and that budget comes from contributions from our members. Answering the second question, yes, we still have a few members that are, in addition to their main job, being a registry, that are also a registrar. But if you look at their turnover, that would be a very small amount, percentage-wise. And most of them are trying to get rid of the registrar business. It's typically direct registrations only for their own CCTLD that historically they've always taken on board. Quite often they started as registry and registrar, and some of those old customers don't want to let go, and in particular governments are quite keen on cutting out as many what they probably see as middlemen as possible. So they are still fond on direct registrations. In general, you would see that those direct registrations are very expensive compared to regular price of a domain, exactly because registries don't see this as a long-term business. They want to deter registrants from looking at direct registrations. So yes, at the moment it's partially true, and I would say from the top of my head maybe 5 out of the 43 center members would still have some sort of registrar business that they're trying to get rid of. In terms of how that reflects on their activities within ICANN, none of them are active in the registrar communities within ICANN. They will focus their attention 90% on CCNSO, as some of them have been diversifying their business to the new GTLTs and are offering backend services. You will find one or two of my members sitting in GNSO constituency meetings as well.
So I feel discriminated. Mohammed, you didn't mention APTLD as if we were non-existent. So let me just add a couple of points. No, it's okay. It's okay. You know, I can take all the blame, you know, because I was not that detailed in my narration or my presentation. We likewise are a membership fee-based organization, so our members contribute on a voluntary basis, although there are certain brackets, I mean, depending on the number of registrations, obviously. That's number one. As to a registrar model, I think that, well, at least some of them are still pretty much engaged, especially those small ones, I mean small registries. They do exercise that function of a registrar, but in certain cases, and that also probably goes in line with what Peter said, their quotations are prohibitively high, just to avoid any kind of repercussions on the part of a local anti-monopoly authority. So, of course, they charge quite an amount. An interesting point also is that not all the registrars in the region can get access to all the registries, because for some registries a strict policy dictates they should register, I mean they should do registrations only for local residents. And yet another interesting stuff is that for a couple of registries in the region, they actually provide registrations for free, which is a very unique model, and this is a kind of pure public interest policy they pursue, and as such they hold a very special niche in the region. And as to getting registrars access to APTLD in whatever capacity, yes, we do accept them as associate members. I mean, when it comes to global registrars, they can do it. Thank you.
Okay, on the question about the by Dr. Paulus on the center and what it can do with registrars. I guess the question was mainly about registrars. So, I mean, indeed, this is an area that the center would be interested to work in. Actually, in one or two of the workshops that were held last year. We had two CEOs coming from registrars in Europe and in the US, and part of what they had shared with participants was about their business models, and obviously there are different business models for registrars. So it's kind of like sharing best practices from other regions or other more developed regions. Also. Another workshop that we did in 4 countries was about studying the local TLD market that belongs to the CCTLD, and in there we had participation from local registrars and resellers, so not only ICANN accredited registrars but also local registrars. Now the one important point in this context is that we are cognizant that developing or growing a domain name market or registrar market is not going to happen, separate from other kind of developments, because at the end the DNS is part of a bigger ecosystem. And in a recent study that URID has conducted for the Middle East, it showed that factors that relate to local content or hosting or online payment methods, all these factors are affecting the development and the growth of the domain name markets in any place. So it's not only about, so while the center is going to be very much focused on the domain name kind of area, including registries, registrars, and so forth, obviously more effort needs to be done in other areas as well, and those areas will need to see more partnerships with maybe business, maybe policymakers and so forth, to sort of support the development of the larger ecosystem.
And I will briefly respond to some of the questions, and particularly the Latin American and Caribbean context, I think resonates greatly. I mean, we do share similar structures, I would say, as that of the African region. The CCTLD environment in my region still operates 2/3 of them on a direct registration basis. That means that the registrar environment is quite is low, and the uptake of this registrar model still needs to be developed. There's only 20 regional registrars accredited by ICANN, so this is also an eloquent number of how this operates. We nevertheless have a very, very interesting example in the region, where one of the largest CCTLDs 6 years ago developed its own registrar, and it works as a different brand, and it's a different company within their own system, and it's very interesting when you listen to them. It's a Mexican case, by the way, how they did that, not just as a new business opportunity, but because they realized they needed to create a denser ecosystem for the DNS in Mexico, and it is a very, very relevant and eloquent example of how sometimes the know-how is in the old players in CCTLDs who have been traditionally working there, and then you sometimes need to partner with the people who have the knowledge so as to develop these other opportunities. And lastly, in LACTLD, we are funded by our members as well, but maybe, and this is, I also think that we share some good experiences and examples with Barrack and AfTLD, is that for certain projects, we do have the support of ICANN or ISOC, or yes, mostly ICANN or ISOC for certain particular projects. So we can operate and run LACTLD without having external support, but let's say to hold a very large meeting for engineers developing basic DNS, etc., then we would have the support of ISOC, and that would make the workshop more attractive and have a larger number of members coming in. And another project I would like to mention, for example, as part of the, which I developed it briefly, we are taking part of many projects in the ICANN LAC strategy. We are not, for example, one of the projects is about developing an internship program among CCTLDs in the region. That is not a LACTLD project. We said, oh, this is a really nice idea, and we are going to partner with ICANN, but this does not come from LACTLD's own funding. I mean, it's something that if ICANN is interested in developing this as a regional project, then we will participate and our members benefit from it, but it's not part of LACTLD. So I hope this answers your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolina. Last but not least, Alex, if you would ask your question.
Thank you. I want to be clear, I want to make my question in French, please. Je suis, en tant que registre donc national, j'ai deux problématiques qui se posent quand on parle de registrar. Et de revendeur? Parce que pour moi, il y a plusieurs notions que l'on peut avoir. La question que je vais poser va être relative un peu à mon interrogation. Quand on parle de registrars, on parle de registrars globaux, qui sont accrédités par ICANN. Est-ce qu'il existe le concept au niveau des régions de registrars régionaux? C'est accrédité par qui? Parce qu'ils n'ont qu'un centre d'espèces qui est limité et ils n'ont aucune volonté d'ailleurs d'être globaux. Ça, je pense que, est-ce que ces discussions ont eu encore? Et je pense que c'est une question qu'il faut qu'on regarde. Parce que d'autre part, sinon on ne parle de revendeurs. C'est-à-dire qu'ils revendent des noms de domaine dans un espace limité, local ou régional. Mais ces revendeurs, quelle est leur légitimité par rapport à justement la notion de registrar? Et nous, comment les registres, nous, pouvons-nous faire la part des choses entre qui est registrar global, qui est registrar local, qui est registrar régional, et en fin de compte donner des droits justement et pouvoir, parce qu'on parle de vouloir accroître le business autour des noms de domaine. Mais tant qu'on n'a pas clarifié un certain nombre de choses, on a des difficultés à pouvoir réellement savoir qui on accrédite en tant que registrar, qui est revendeur, quelle est en fait la chaîne de valeur qu'on va mettre en place qui permette réellement d'avoir une économie numérique. Et ça, c'est une question qui pour moi m'interpelle fortement. Je voudrais savoir si au niveau des 4 régions que nous avons ici, je sais que on en parle beaucoup par exemple dans le projet de ICANN, qui est de mettre en place en Afrique justement un vrai business autour de l'industrie de DNS, mais je pense que cette clarification pour moi elle est essentielle.
Merci Alex. I think I open it to the panel. Anyone who wants to take the question? Let it go.
Thank you. For Center, it's very simple. Every CCTLD decides on the accreditation of its registrars. And as far as I know, they will not accept accreditations from other registrars. There is no such thing as a certified regional registrar. They are all certified on country-by-country basis. Some of our members still have the requirement in place that you need to be a national entity before you can become a registrar. So that obviously restricts that gives some limitations to that concept. But it has been discussed before. I think the practical steps that we are setting is probably the first start. I could easily see similar sized registrars get together and start working on a more bilateral basis to accept each other's accreditations or to have a fully automated process that could even be respectful of their diversities. But on a central-wide scale, this is not the case at the moment.
Well, I would join Peter because my understanding is that, and that was actually brought about by Paulus, I didn't know that had happened for a while in APTLD, but there was that idea of establishing a gateway or a clearinghouse for regional registrars to be accredited like a whole bunch by all these CCTLDs. But of course, unlike Europe, you would imagine that in Asia Pacific there are so many legal regimes which have been absolutely incompatible. And it's hard to harmonize all of them across Asia Pacific. Yet that's a very good issue, and of course it's a very promising one because obviously economies of scale and some harmonization of that piece of legislation is very important. My concern though is that some members may not be happy about that because that would give rise it could be a spillover effect to some regional mega regulator. You know what I mean? Not just to be a APTLD, for example, a clearinghouse for registrars relations, but also to dictate or impose certain policies with which members may not be in agreement necessarily. So this is a very tiny issue, but maybe really important at the end of the day. So it's a long way to go, but at least there has been some discussion on this. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. It's a very good one, actually, and it's one where in the region of Latin America and the Caribbean we would like to get more data, and our CCTLD members would like to know more what's going on in what's called the secondary market, because we know that, and they know, our members, that there is a lot going on in the secondary market, and it's so out of control in a way that CCTLDs are not happy, but they are not asking LACTLD to take any position and do anything on their behalf, because that is something that is completely outside our scope and remit, and we would definitely not be working, at least our members do not want LACTLD to engage in any kind of clearinghouse function. But what we do see, despite this figure I mentioned of around 20 LAC region registrars coming from the LAC region accredited by ICANN, there are others, many other registrars who operate on a national basis, and for many of our CCTLD members, it is more important to have a national accreditation rather than an ICANN accreditation. I mean, they'd rather contact a registrar with an address and who's a tax-paying company in that country, and that makes them feel safer. And we have examples even of the smallest CCTLDs engaging in the registrar model who are looking for the national presence. That's what they care about.
Thank you, Carolina. I think the panel deserves a round of applause. Thank you very much for that information. So we'll be